Hello everyone, Dog Walker Dave here. If you're one of us who likes to run and hike in all types of conditions, I've learned a few tricks over the last 40 years of doing this that will help keep your feet warm when the temperature goes below 0 degrees Celsius. And just a little bit of further context, I'm the type of person who has run down as low as minus 38 degrees Celsius, which is pretty close to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. I have a lot of experience running outside. In my lifetime, I think I've run on a treadmill 5 times total. I prefer running outside at all times. So here are my tips to keep your feet warm when the temperature plummets to below 0. Tip number 1, buy your running shoes or hiking boots a half a size smaller at the very minimum for your longer foot. What this does is, firstly, you're not touching the inside of your running shoe or hiking boot with your toes, so then you don't get the conduction through the material of the shoes itself. And secondly, it gives your toes a little bit of wiggle room, so when you're running, they can move a little bit more, and that adds to the circulation to help keep your feet warmer. Tip number 2, this applies in all types of weather for me. Do not wear cotton socks. Wear something of a merino wool or a wool blend or a synthetic blend of any sort. Cotton will get wet. When your feet get wet, just like with every other body part, and wet and cold are just a terrible combination. To add to the socks, I always prefer to run in a longer sock. This is a mid-calf, but you can also get over-the-calf socks. And a longer sock helps keep your calf warmer, which helps a bit to keep your feet warmer. Tip number 3, if you have a pair of running shoes that you really like in the warmer months, with a lot of ventilation in the toe box specifically, stay away from this type of shoe in the colder months. Especially when you get wind and the cold and it goes through the mesh in the toe box and it makes for a miserable experience. I prefer to run in something like this Salomon Speedcross 6, not sponsored by any stretch of the imagination. The Speedcross 6 is quite warm in the summer months, but it is really nice to run in the winter months because there's not a lot of breathability in the toe box specifically. But having said that, with the Speedcross 6, is that the midsole is quite firm. So when it's really cold, a midsole that's quite firm when it's warmer becomes really stiff when you're running in the colder months. Tip number 4, I prefer to stay away from a waterproof shoe or a boot, like a Gore-Tex. What I find is the waterproof material is great for keeping the moisture from coming into your shoe, but the breathability, it doesn't matter what they say about it, the breathability of a waterproof shoe is not that great. And that just builds up the moisture inside your feet, which makes your feet colder. So I prefer to stay completely away from a waterproof running shoe or a hiking boot. Tip number 5 is make sure you keep your core and your head warm. Dress in multiple layers. If your body has to expend a lot of energy trying to keep your core warm, less blood is going to your extremities like your fingers and your toes and fingers are going to get colder if your core is colder. So make sure you dress in layers and keep your core as warm as possible. Tip number 6, if you're going out for longer adventures, consider putting a pair of dry socks in your bag so that you can switch out midway through your long adventure. Dry feet equals warmer feet. Tip number 7, Gators. You can go with a lower cut gator like these Gators I have here. They are not very long, but that helps keep your ankles warm. Also keeps the snow and debris out, but keeps your ankles warmer, which keep your feet warmer. You can also go with a longer gator, which I do not have, but I find these shorter gators, when it gets really cold, keeps your ankles warm to go with those long socks, and it helps keep your feet warmer. And my last tip, number 8, is when it gets really cold. 2 years ago I ran and it was minus 38 degrees Celsius, toe warmers. I typically will put toe warmers in my running shoes when it's about minus 25 degrees Celsius or colder. And I find the key with wearing toe warmers or hand warmers for that matter, is to put the hand warmers or toe warmers on top of your toes. So in between your toes and the top of your toe box in your running shoe, and not underneath, because if you put them underneath, I find that sometimes you can get blisters if you're going a little bit longer. So you put them on top of your socks, not on your bare skin, on top of your socks, so that there's a nice warm layer between the top of your toes and the toe box of the running shoes. This helps to keep your feet warmer when it's really cold. So that's what I have, everyone. Those are some tips to help you run when it's really cold. And I know many of my subscribers are in many places of the world where it doesn't even get below 10 degrees Celsius. So these are not going to be useful to you. But for any of us that have run in colder temperatures, when it gets to -10 and colder, hopefully these tips will help you in your running and hiking adventures. If you have any other suggestions for running tips, keep your feet warm when it's really cold, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, everyone. And remember, outside is always better than inside.